juxtaposition, to place different things together in order to create an interesting effect or to show how they are the same or different. Welcome to another episode of Time to Give Back. In this case, I would like to juxtapose the entirety of the contents of all of my previous videos, including the actual environment or background itself. I would like to juxtapose all of that, against the essence of today's topic. The previous videos speak of inner peace, outward tolerance, hope, appreciation, consideration, self-contemplation, positivity, and the process of utilizing the intellect, common sense, wisdom, and self-development of one's moral, spiritual, and psychological and cognitive capacities in order to free oneself from whatever obstacles that assail us. So in this video, we address the darkness that robs us humans of all of the previously mentioned capacities, capabilities, faculties, civilities, and assets that separate us from beasts, while at the same time leaving us with all of the weapons and means to inflict harm on those who might offend us in some manner or other. And I'm talking about anger. Now, did you know that 85% of all people with anger issues end up... No, let's start with this. Have you ever heard that people who are consistently angry are 7 times more likely to have... Now, you know what? Let's just jump to this one. Are you aware that 93% of all people in prison attribute anger as the... You know what? I have to be honest with you. This isn't that kind of video. In fact, my intention is not to bore you with obvious statistics. Anger and the statistics that come with it scare no one. I want to talk instead about the essence of anger from the perspective that might help someone, anyone, one person somewhere, alleviate it just in time to prevent the consequences that come along with anger. If one person can avoid blowing up or losing their temper to the extent that it causes them some regret, then this video is successful. Now, for me, I like movies. And sometimes I like movies, I use movies to motivate myself. So whether I want to picture anger as some crazed monkey inside of a plastic cage that I don't want anyone to unlock, like in 28 Days Later, or maybe it's like a mountaintop bonfire that's set aflame to warn me of approaching threats, like in The Lord of the Rings. You know, to give me a chance to prepare myself and to de-escalate before anything can even happen. I'll use anything I can to preempt any and every possible trigger of anger. What I want to do in this video is simply mention the fact that we are all vulnerable to becoming angry. We should all be on guard against triggers of anger. And we should all try to generate a plan or a system or a method to diffuse our anger whenever we begin to experience it. I'll tell you my trick right now. In my mind, I try to make anger, I rehearse in my mind and in my heart, anger as being the most repugnant, slimiest, stinkiest filth that I can think of. Something that you know, just causes me to recoil. I try to make anger a literal cause of self-embarrassment. Like, I want to be humiliated by losing my temper. So finally, I try to envision a worst case scenario with regards to the consequences of losing my temper. And those things work really well for me. You know, imagining yourself in jail or pinned underneath a car because you road rage and any of that stuff, or just really regretting something bad that comes just flaring up, losing your temper, going blind with rage, and then you spend the rest of your life regretting that. Those kind of things, I rehearse those, and it really does. It does the trick for me. So anger, what's left to say about it? We all understand that it's emotion-based and that it's bad. But let's look at one definition of it. An intense emotional state of displeasure with something or someone. Sounds benign enough, right? Something natural that sometimes happens and then we get over it, right? But if you go to the prisons all over the world that are filled with millions of people, you'll hear a different perspective on what anger is and whether or not it's benign. Remember in one of my other videos where I said that society has accepted the idea that there are as many different types of people in this world as there are different people, different perspectives, attitudes, emotional states of mind, bank accounts, races, skin tones, and even nationalities. People see it that way. There's as different as you are from them, you are a different type of human being altogether. Sometimes unrelatable, unworthy. It's amazing how many different categories. It's simply every single difference becomes a category for differentiation that causes division and dislike or mistrust. Every person is different, no doubt. And so we should judge each person based upon his or her particular set of variable qualities, which means give them a chance. Let's see what those qualities are. And so we judge away. But as I said, there are actually only two types of people, male and female. And the differences between those two being perfect, beneficial, and actually beautiful. Our job is not to judge people, but rather to use our judgment with regards to whom we bring into our closest circle of trust. That is, be good to everyone, but bring good people close to you. So what I'm talking about doesn't really have anything to do with categorizing people as they or them or others. It has more to do with protecting your vulnerable self so that you have what you need in order to be good to all types of people. Once that's been abused, then there's a certain category of people that you're not going to trust and not going to be good to. And the more you let your defenses down in the wrong way, the more people get in of every type, right? And then there are more people that you won't trust and that you dislike until, maybe you just shut everyone out. So it is worth guarding, but it doesn't mean you can't be good to people. Take that same tendency to categorize with regards to anger. People think that there are different types of anger, some being permissible or tolerable or even appropriate. To that, I like to offer the following analogy. A man walks into a nightclub and he sits down at the bar. With slurred speech, blurry eyes, and struggling to keep his balance on his stool, he says, "I want a bottle of tequila." The bartender examines the fellow and replies, "You've had too much already." To which the man replies, "I'll be the judge of that." Now, my point here is that it's pretty simple. Once you have even tasted something that can affect, contaminate, pervert, poison, infect, influence, modify, or alter your intellect, your mental acuity, or your judgment skill set, which includes wisdom and common sense and gut feeling and things like that, then once you've tasted something that can affect you or influence you or modify you, then you immediately compromise the person you were moments ago. Moments before you even touched it, tasted it, or affected in the slightest bit by it, you are different now, however, to whatever degree. So to think that a drug only affects your pleasure senses, right, which is why people want to take drugs, for pleasure, to think that a drug only affects your pleasure senses is to deny that whatever enters the bloodstream is circulated to every portion of the body, every organ, and every tissue. That's why you can test tissues that aren't even inside the body to see if someone's used drugs. So, you, the judge, have been compromised. Yeah, you're the judge, but once you touch or even taste something that is, bad for you or, can contaminate you in some way, then you, the judge, have been compromised. So to compromise, let's look at that. To compromise means to negotiate with, and generally, being open to negotiations is a good thing. But to be compromised is also to be breached, and breached in a sense of security, as in when someone or something malicious has infiltrated something pure or somewhere safe or otherwise was uncontaminated. So among the synonyms for compromise is the word capitulate. Now, take in the synonyms of this word, capitulate: surrender, submit, concede, buckle under, give up, cave in. To those whose lives have been ripped apart by drugs and alcohol, these words are not unrelated to the very day that they were compromised by their drug of choice or their peers' pressure drug of choice. So whoever their peers were may have brought that drug to them. All of these undesirable words were buried behind the phrase casual drug use or recreational drug use, just as the word capitulate is buried behind the word compromise, which is itself buried behind the word negotiation. Basically, when dangerous things are closely related to risky things, it's best to steer clear of the whole lot. So that's a huge point, right? If there's something that in itself is not deadly per se, but it's risky and what it's based on has consequences or side effects, then the relationship between those is very real and you have to take them seriously. In the case of this analogy between drugs and anger, a chemical has infiltrated the natural and balanced neurochemical ecosystem of the body. A more drastic chemical would be heroin. Everyone agrees that introducing even the slightest amount of heroin into one's system compromises that entire system's normal mode of functioning. The point is that some things are not meant to be toyed with. Some paths are not meant to be traveled a little bit. Some things are dead serious and should be avoided at all costs. In a sense, I'm not trying to make a point about drugs. I'm really not. I'm trying to make a point about being infected by something that can subtly compromise a formerly properly functioning set of systems, neural system, psycho, physio, etc., which obviously affect our inward perspective and our outward behavior, which then impacts our lives and the lives of others. So both drugs and anger can disrupt and destroy a properly functioning mind, family, and even community. I'm saying that instead of pretending that anger has a positive side and a potential use, we need to recognize that all conditions and emotional states that lead to anger are things to be identified, mitigated, or avoided whenever possible. The person who tells others that it's none of their business that he or she is angry is like the drunkard who tells the bartender that he or she will be the judge of whether they can handle one more drink responsibly. In either instance, the judge has been compromised and is no longer fit to make decisions. Now, doesn't mean you can't come back from that. Doesn't mean you can't calm down and then make decisions. Doesn't mean you throw the human away. So I understand that that kind of talk makes people nervous, right? Sounds like someone's rights are about to be taken away. New rules and legislation are on their way to lock down grown adults from their right to experience life in its freest form. No, okay? So no. Listen, I make the analogy so that we can look ahead with all due seriousness to the irreversible consequences that often come from tasting something that can immediately consume us. You taste it and it swallows your whole life. So you taste it and then it swallows you and your entire life. It's that serious. And you can do some research. You can ask your relatives. Somebody will tell you. So I have 4 loose definitions that come into my mind when I define anger. 4 of them. Here we go. 1, a reaction that, if left unchecked, becomes an overreaction. Now you think about that, how often you've seen that. Number 2, an overreaction that leads to self-destruction that is initiated by acting out against something or someone. Number 3, excessive blindness, hatred, desire, craving, passion, ambition, and anger to whatever gets in the way. Whatever gets in your way, you immediately go to an extreme to the point where you're blind. You're almost blind. You're almost black out. Instead of disliking you, it's hatred. It's a desire that overwhelms you. It's a craving that you can't resist. It's a passion that you must act on. It's an ambition that goes beyond a a drive that is healthy. And that's to anything that gets in your way, or it's to different, you might have that reaction to different things. But those are some of the words that come to mind. And number 4, the destroyer of knowledge, intellect, cognitive thought, reason, self-discipline, dignity, good character, etc. It is a destroyer of all of these good things. That's why it's very sad when you see an uncle or a cousin or something, and in the courtroom, everyone's saying, that's not him. He would never do that. She couldn't possibly be the one. But in that instance, everything good that you know that person to be was destroyed. And then they destroyed themselves, and maybe some others. Consider the following flow. Something triggers anger. Anger leads to overreaction, which leads to escalation. Escalation leads to conflict. Conflict leads to violence. And violence leads to injury, death, or prison. The victims who survive those scenarios are left with a type of anger which can be more easily triggered from then on. Once triggered, their anger leads to escalation, which leads to overreaction, which leads to conflict, which leads to violence, which leads to injury, death, or prison. I know, it's an oversimplification that doesn't always work out that way, but you get the gist. It starts subtly, it gets out of control, you're overwhelmed, you blind with rage, consequences follow, people and lives are messed up. Those people with messed up lives are more sensitive to whatever situations, more likely to then be triggered, perhaps, and then they can follow that same thing. That's why you will see young kids who blow up like their parents did and more sensitive and so on. It's almost contagious. But humans get angry. That's natural. And it doesn't make a person evil. Sounds normal enough. So, if anger is natural and normal, what's the problem? Well, look around, okay? Watch the news. Check out social media, some of the comments and how they're interacting. Go into the streets. Go inside the stores. Hang out at a gas station for a little bit. 2 main points here. First, human emotions stretch out along a continuum. Secondly, we can use the continuum as an early warning system that gives us enough time to pump the brakes and exit the path that leads to anger. Now, seriously, let's look at this continuum. I'm making this up, but let's just consider it. There's probably a better one online or however you want to research this. But here's mine. 1 through 13. Let's go through it. Number 1, we're starting with happy and such, and we're going to not so good. Number 1, blissfully content. Most people don't know that, but there's some people that are truly blissfully content. They're happy. They're really living happy lives. They're not necessarily rich or anything, but they're blissfully content, number 1. Number 2, casually aware. Okay? That just means you're not blissfully content, just bopping along. You're casually aware. Nothing wrong with that. Number 3, somewhat concerned. Number 4, slightly annoyed. Number 5, noticeably irritated, whether you notice it or someone else notices it. Number 6, generally ready to avoid the situation, person, place, or thing. Number 7, internally on alert without an outward indication. Number 8, upset and ready to communicate this. I'm upset, I'm gonna let somebody know. Number 9, on guard, taking a stand and defensive, but with no intention to escalate. You had enough, you're going to be firm, you're going to make some statements. It may be an argument, that's not illegal. Number 10, ready to escalate as needed, but with no intention to harm. Okay? Number 11, mad and on the way to angry, and whatever I get, they will get back. So you're ready to retaliate. But again, that could just be arguing back or yelling back or some things like that. Number 12, angry and on the way to irate, and anything goes. So I'm angry and I'm about to get all the way pissed off. And if that happens, anything goes, okay? And number 13, blind rage and I don't give a flower patch, what happens to me or anyone else? Okay, so that's the continuum. It's worth looking at that. I want everyone to write this down, actually. Write down this continuum and then add even the tiniest version or degree that you can think of which fits in between any of these other levels of emotion. Anything between any one of those two, if you can think of something that comes in between there emotionally, put it. Make yours, instead of 13, 45, however many you can do. The more you have, the better, especially if you generally move along the continuum in a methodical emotional pace, okay? So remember that some things can take us by surprise, all right? That's life. You can just YouTube, YouTube is full of examples of stupidity and basically sociopathic behavior that most people would never expect to encounter or exhibit. But it happens, and you can see why when you look at YouTube, and you can see the context. Still, the more of these along this continuum that you can come up with, the more of these you have between you and actual anger, the better. And that's what I want, okay? The continuum is not just to come up with different words and synonyms. The continuum is so that when things don't go your way or people start to annoy you, you go from blissfully content to something else, to something else, to something. You have more traveling to do from happy to out, just enraged. That's the point of the continuum. To have somewhere to travel from to without it always being jail or a gunfight. What I want to discuss is the concept of self-intervention with regards to escaping the continuum before you get to true anger. Okay, so you're traveling the continuum from happy and you see yourself going toward anger, but you got a long way to go because you got a big, long continuum. I want to get off of this train. All right, I want, the concept of self-intervention with regards to escaping the continuum before you get to true anger. Because when you are truly angry, it can be too late to think or to choose to do the right thing. That's my point about being infected with something small. If it's so powerful, like heroin, like anger, then even the smallest dose, it destroys your capacity to make these good decisions. Listen, my videos are long. I know, I make them. But I'm trying to reach a part of each listener in a way that can make a difference, okay? That takes longer than the 15-minute people are awesome videos that you see on YouTube. So please just bear with me. So let's get back to it. My idea was to come up with as many micro emotional levels on the continuum as I could, then to match that number of levels with self-intervention triggers. You'll see what I mean in a second here. So I have 13 or whatever levels on my continuum. Think of each level of emotional irritation as being the path to annihilation. Okay? Think of each level of emotional irritation as being the path to annihilation. Okay? Now, think of the various ways you prefer not to be annihilated. Okay? And match that list with escape triggers. I know, let me clear it up. I had 13 emotional states on my continuum. Now I have, let's see how many, I have 12 escapes. So they're basically escapes for each one of those. So let's look at the first one. Number one, and these are kind of like internal visualizations or, something you can do inside yourself to help yourself. So number one, pull the eject lever on a fighter jet before it hits the ground. Now, let's think about this. Note, if you pull the ejection lever too late, you'll splat on the ground, right? You won't go up and the parachute won't come out. If you do it too late, it's too late. And that's what I'm talking about, these emotional triggers. Something is coming your way, you see it coming, you can do some things internally to prepare yourself to escape, not just to deal with something crazy, right? I'm not going to spend a half an hour trying to calm myself internally and at the same time arguing with somebody that hates me and so on. These are escape mechanisms so that you can literally leave. Okay? So these are just ways to think of how you don't want to die and what you would do to save yourself. So number one was pull the lever on ejection seat of a fighter jet. Number two, deploy the safety rafts before the ship hits the iceberg. You don't want to hit an iceberg, right? You don't want to splat on the ground from a jet fighter, right? Number three, jump into the escape pod before the spaceship's power core hits critical mass. You've seen that before, right? Sir, Captain, there's critical mass. The core is going to blow up. It's going to explode. All right? Jump into the escape pod. Number four, dump the bike in the grass before you reach the cliff. Note, if you dump the bike too late, you'll go off the cliff anyway, because anger has a momentum. You can't sometimes, some people may be blessed to be able to turn it off. The rest of the humans, once we get going, it builds. Okay? Number five, turn down the alley before the hitman catches up to you, right? A hitman's coming to kill you. You turn down this corner quick enough, he doesn't know which way you went. We've escaped annihilation. Number six, cut the yellow wire before the bomb goes off. Number seven, see into the future. Okay, this is a different one. See into the future. You're dead or you're in prison. Now go back in time and rescue yourself by leaving that bad situation. Number eight, remember your favorite movie and smile on the inside and be thankful that you're not the butthead who's being mean and walk away. What does that mean? That means sometimes you can think of something so pleasant in your own life, and they call it, going to a happy place, whatever. And it brings you such joy that you can literally look at the person who's being mean to you and think to yourself, man, I'm so glad I'm not them. I'm so glad I'm not them that I'm actually happy. And I think I'm going to go see a movie. I'm just going to go, I'm going to get some ice cream. This person wouldn't be happy if they had ice cream. But me, I'm thankful that I'm not them. Number nine, jump off the train before it goes over the collapsing bridge. Now, hit the brakes before it reaches the end of the tracks, right? Because if you don't do it soon enough, you're still going over the bridge. Number 10, remember that you have a life and many good things in it. Remember that the consequences of anger take all that away. Number 11, you're wearing an explosive vest, and the butthead that's coming up to you has the detonator. Take off the explosive vest, which is your sensitivity, right? Your ego, your defensiveness, your right to be right. I'm right. Or your high sense of what is righteous. Get rid of that. That's your vest, and they'll use that to blow you up. All of those things can be used against you by an unhappy person. Your sense of pride, your own dignity, your happiness, the way you look, the way you smile. Mean people can turn all that against you. Number 12, and this is the last one. Remember your favorite movie and pretend. Pretend that you have the power to simply decide to be other than the angry person that you are. Pretend and make it real, if only for a split second. So you're pretending, and I don't care. People make fun of you or they think, oh, well, that's the crazy person. Hey, pretend your way out of a horrible situation so that you can live to be happy another day. Remember when I mentioned that the victims or survivors of anger are left with a scarring or a traumatization that can actually cause them to be triggered more easily than others? I said that at the beginning. If something traumatic happens to you, you're kind of scarred in a way. Nothing you can't get over necessarily, but there's something there that you remember and that could be triggered by other new things that happen. This is a form of bias or a predisposition to be less tolerant of something which accelerates your trip down the continuum or immediately escalates you further down the continuum, skipping all the lesser emotional states. So people sometimes refer to this skipping as having snapped, okay? And I just came up with that, but what I'm saying is when I think about how long my continuum is, and that something that catching me completely by surprise, despite my best efforts, I skip every single one of those 13 emotional states that lead to anger. I'm unable to quickly use one of my triggers, and then all of a sudden I'm enraged. Well, I call that snapping. So here's the thing, though. Anger is a natural human emotional response, okay? And let's just take a look at some of the things that can get you there. Why? Because I want you to think ahead. And so maybe when something comes your way, you think, man, you know what? That's right. This is one of those things. I just don't want to be around for this. Or I'm going to find a way to shut that down before. So let's look. Anger is a natural human emotional response to such things as, number one, we only got 8. Number one, not getting what you want. Ever since we're little babies, that's the way it's been, okay? So just admit it and know that that's part of sometimes why you get angry. It's natural. Number 2, not getting what you expect. A variation, but it trust me, it's different. Number 3, being disrespected in your home, on the highways, at school, at work, or anywhere else by anyone. Being disrespected. Huge. Many people have died because of that. Wars have been fought. Families ruined. Divorces. Respect is very important. But anger is not the first thing that should happen when that's okay. So number 4, being violated, betrayed, injured, or otherwise harmed by another individual or even an organization. These make sense, right? Number 5, being taken advantage of or exploited by friends, family, associates, bosses, or complete strangers or organizations. Number 6, not having what you need. Now you think about that. Most of us, we have what we need. We don't have what we want. And that's frustrating in itself. And for some people, not having what you want, which is number 7, not having what you want. People get tired of not having what they want. I mean, they can make it through childhood and high school and college and stuff. But sometimes, eventually, some people, they have enough of not having what they want. And so they steal. But not having what you need is a more critical issue. And if we don't care about people that don't have what they need, they will do something. They will do what they think they need to do to have what they need. And that can cause problems. So we have to consider those people. And number 8, last one, being dissatisfied with or by people, organizations, government, products, etc. So being dissatisfied, it becomes an irritation more than an annoyance. And being dissatisfied can actually it can be a trigger. It can be a pet peeve that turns into a trigger. Okay, and what has come of anger? What? Because there's some people like, hey man, it's natural. I'm not fighting the forces of nature. It's just natural. Just deal with it. Let's take a look at what's come from anger. It's only 6 in this list. Number 1, billions. Billions of lives lost in wars and acts of violence through the span of time. That's not funny. That's not a joke. That's not nothing. Number 2, children being brutally snatched from innocence, their naivete. They're snatched from having happy hearts and innocent and happy minds without the stain of vengefulness. This, from just viewing the brutality resulting from acts of anger. Other times it's being brutalized themselves, but sometimes just seeing something raw and brutal, it just robs them of their childhood. They instantly know about death. They instantly know about betrayal. They instantly know about just blind rage and someone saying, you know what my mom taught me, what the police say, the judges, the police system, the law, I don't care about any of that. I'm going to do this. They see that. Now, sometimes they just see it and it devastates them. And sometimes it's happening to them. And then, of course, society is affected. Number 4, fear of leaving the home. Fear of being at home. Fear of living in the city. Fear of living out in the country. Fear of them, fear of they, fear of those, fear of he, her, it. Fear of everything that isn't you. And some people even fear themselves. They fear what they might do with their own anger, but this fear, every time something horrible happens, that's one more thing some people fear. That's what anger can get us. Number 5, loss of trust beyond the self. I only trust me. Everyone else, they're barbarians, they're scoundrels, they're corrupt. Number 6, a looming sense that it's all going to get worse. So I might as well get ready to go to war against the people, the systems, the processes, and anything else that gets in between me and my happiness. Now, it sounds a little judgmental and it sounds a little like just some talking. But really, if you look at those statements, this is what anger gets us. It's a destroyer. All right, enough with the particulars of anger. I'd like to use the movie called The Matrix to describe a couple of important points. In The Matrix, humans were unknowingly enslaved. Their every moment of life was controlled, consumed, and nothing more than a false sense of reality. Everything about their lives was a lie, because in reality, they were locked up, locked away, and unable to actually live their lives. In real life, we have our choice of which version of the Matrix we'd like to live in. And no matter which Matrix you choose, you'll be wasting your real life and the purpose of your life until you finally escape it. Okay? Once again, escaping the illusion means facing reality, which always means more work. I spoke about the work it takes to appreciate the positives in one's life, the work it takes to rekindle the power of hope, and the work it takes to protect your mental well-being. Now, we're talking about the work it takes to stay ahead of or out of the way of the triggers of anger. Or you can just take the blue pill and stay in the matrix. Now, I'm going to assume, for the purposes of this video, that we're taking the red pill. And what does that mean? My point is that we can come up with thousands of reasons and excuses and validate the obstacles for allowing each of those thousands of people, places, processes, and things to come between us and living our lives to the fullest. So you're choosing the blue pill to stay in the matrix in many different ways, is what I'm trying to say. There's many ways to choose to be in the matrix, to choose to let your life flow on, without you doing the work, without you living it to the fullest. And I made a list, okay? I make a lot of lists. So let's look at this list. It's 7. So what is the list? It's how do we choose to just say, man, it's not in my control. I'm just going to let my life just flow on. Or I'm not going to do the work to get the most out of life. Number 1, can't be with the family because I have to go to work. So, not going to get the most out of family. Can't buy a pet, which is very therapeutic, because I don't have time to take care of it. But it was therapeutic. It could help you. Can't go to bed in time or on time, which is very good for your health and emotional stability, because I have to watch a movie. Can't tell the truth because nobody can handle the truth. No one respects the truth, and they'll only punish you. They will only punish you and never understand. So truth is useless. Can't use the truth, and so you live with the consequences of lies all the time. Number 5, can't afford to be polite, courteous, or kind because people will exploit that as a weakness every single time. Can't work towards my dreams because my dreams won't pay the bill. And I can't control my anger because the world is crazy, and I just hope I don't lose it one day. So there's different reasons that we give up doing the right thing or putting in the work that would put us on a good path, a better path. After you put in the work and you do some of these things, the opposite of some of these can'ts, you end up living a more fulfilling life, a less stressful life, better friendships, better relationships with everything. All right, but that last one, I can't control my anger. The world is crazy, and I just hope I don't lose it one day. So there's a person who's just said, hey, I can't control my anger. Whatever happens, happens. The world is crazy. I get crazy. That's a mistake. Let me use another example, and then I'll make my point clear. I was asked to travel and to speak at some prisons. I began to prepare my talk, and I came up with something like this. Let me take a poll of all the prisoners. So I'm at the prison. Okay, let's say I'm at the prison, and this is what I'm presenting. This is my presentation to the prisoners. Let me take a poll of all the prisoners in all of the prisons across the country. Tell me who your favorite celebrity of all times is and why. Okay, who's your favorite celebrity and why? Now, I could request and pay for each celebrity to come with me to these talks, to give these talks to the prisoners. He or she, this celebrity, would sit quietly, or they could participate in the talk. At the end of the talk, we would go our own respective ways, and the prisoners, they simply return to their cells. The words have power, and even more power coming from the beloved celebrities. Okay, so this is a good thing. But those words will be forgotten. The emotional high of interacting with the celebrity, that will fade. All that will be left is for each person's heart, their mind, their spirit to make a decision. So it doesn't matter who I bring. They're going to love it. They're there. There's Sylvester Stallone. There's such and such. Oh, that's great. And they're pumped up and they listen. And I want them to listen and they learn. But in the end, it will always be left to them alone, in silence, in their mind, to make a decision about change, whether what we said was BS, whether it doesn't matter. It'll always be up to them. So now, both scenarios are at the exact same point. Whether your enslavement is an actual prison or an oppressive job, an oppressive economic situation, lifestyle, you're impoverished, or an oppressive nation. You live in a place that's getting bombed out or has a dictator. It doesn't matter who tries to inspire you. You have to do the waking up. You have to wake up. You have to do the wanting to change. You have to do the separating yourself from the people. So if you have some bad people doing some bad things, you have to separate yourself from them. You have to separate yourself from bad people, bad places, bad processes, bad habits, and the things that keep you from changing. You have to do that. You have to do the research, and you have to do the work. You have to educate, you have to control, and you have to improve the you. That's just the truth of it. It's the same thing for everything that's worth doing in life. It's the same thing for achieving our purpose in life. And it's the same thing for overcoming the overwhelming obstacles in life. For some people, their nemesis is anger. It takes more away from them than gambling, war, corruption, and even drugs ever has. So what does this have to do with anger? Everything. Anger is a prison. Now don't get me wrong, for some, it's a huge prison. It's a spacious prison, right? They can go everywhere in this world and, pack their anger just like a gun or a bomb. They take it with them, right? Like a functional addict. A person with anger issues can seem fine and fully capable for decades. For others, anger has landed them in actual jail, and enough times that they have lost some privileges, or they're in prison, so their prison cell is literally not very big. So you see what I'm saying here? If anger is in you and it's very powerful and it's unchecked and you don't care about how to check it, then the world is a huge prison for you. You're bound to destroy yourself somewhere, and maybe you have on occasion here and there, but as much, if you go 20 days without meeting somebody that sets you off, but it's still a prison for you because it's not good for you, and it takes away your freedom, not just of being able to go places, but your freedom of making good choices, your freedom to be happy, your freedom to be civil. And then there's some actual prisoners who are in small prison cells, and they're angry. So either way, anger is a sort of prison. Now, you want to hear the magical words that free you from this prison of anger? I don't know them, but more intelligent, poetic, and profound speakers than me have spoken on the subject. So you might look that up. You want to be told, learn to let it all go from your favorite celebrity? You can try that. Okay, send them a letter. I don't look down on any avenue of escaping the prison of anger, and I applaud every effort. If you find something, you go do it. You want to hit the bottom so you can have the purest form of rehabilitation from anger? Let me tell you something about the bottom. The trip to the bottom is brutal. It's full of regrets, and quite honestly, it doesn't exist. No, I don't know what it's like, but I'm here to tell you that the human mind is this abyss, and it's full of potential, and it's incredible. And one of the incredible things about it is the bottom, no one knows about that. People have gone to great depths in depression and regret from anger or whatever, but there is no the bottom. Otherwise, there would be somebody's, we would have branded that and sold it. Let's just go straight to the bottom, and from there you can launch yourself up. There are certain battles that are worth fighting, certain wars worth waging, and certain valuables worth protecting. I got a list of 4 things here that show you the difference between letting some stuff slide and taking responsibility and standing up, taking a stand for things that really matter. Number 1, you might allow yourself a vice or two, but you must stand and fight against what you know is evil, especially evil within yourself. Number 2, you might allow yourself the occasional white lie, but you must draw a line and stand against injustice. Number 3, you might allow yourself the self-indulgence here and again, but you must resist against that which might pervert your ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Number 4, anger is one of those things you absolutely must fight against. You cannot let it slide. It doesn't get better. Things don't work out well. And don't get me wrong, I have seen people burst, an outburst that quiets everyone down, and they think that was awesome. But they don't understand the long-term associations that they're making and that people are making with them. Listen, life is filled with problems that get in the way of the human desire to achieve happiness. It's a very simple statement. Life is filled with problems that get in the way of the human desire to achieve happiness. People are naturally prone to have problems, which are obstacles to maintaining happiness. If there is a problem, and if we have issues, why would we refuse to address them and discover the solution to them? Right? You got problems, you have issues, you don't want to know the solutions? The point here is, whether you believe in religion or not, one must admit that religious people or organizations have indeed invested time and consideration in resolving the mental, emotional, spiritual, and psychological obstacles to human growth and improvement through spiritual harmony, emotional positivity, mental balance, and psychological well-being. Basically, I'm saying religious folks have put some serious time into trying to resolve some of the human, the plight of humanity, internally. And I'm always pleased and inspired whenever the people of different religions, note, I did not say different people from various religions. I said people of different religions, when they cooperate and contribute to the common human plight. What ails the humans? These religious people from every different denomination, they have done some research and done some work, and they have some answers that are helpful. So in some cases, these religions are not necessarily coming together, but rather are being brought together, as is the case with the project. It's called Project of the International Religious Foundations. Okay, Project of the International Religious Foundations. And there's a book entitled World Scripture, a comparative anthology of sacred texts. Okay, in this book, we see that many religions have done what all humans need to do, and that is examine and address the scourge of humanity, our own anger. Now, there was this one chapter, the chapter entitled simply Control Anger. That's what it was called, Control Anger. And it says, I'm quoting here, anger is one expression of extreme, unrestrained emotion that must be brought under control if one is to make spiritual progress. Anger is a natural feeling that arises upon seeing unrighteousness, yet uncontrolled, it can cause much damage. Now, what follows are quotes from a variety of religions, and I will not take up your time with my interpretation of these thought-provoking statements, but rather I will let each of you, kind of contemplate and research them to the degree that any one of them speaks to your heart. I chose a few of these powerful statements from this book, okay? So let's just take a look. The first one says, with regards to anger, the simplest response was, conquer anger by love. That's from Buddhism. The second one, anger dissolves affection. Therefore, man should subvert anger by forgiveness. That's Jainism. The next one says, the fly cannot be driven away by getting angry at it. And this is from an African traditional religion's Idoma proverb from Nigeria. The next one says, anger deprives a sage of his wisdom, a prophet of his vision. That's from Judaism. The next one says, he who is slow to anger is better than the might, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. And that's from Judaism and Christianity. The next one says, be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity for the devil. That's from Christianity. Okay, the next one says, if an evil man, on hearing of what is good, comes and creates a disturbance, you should hold your peace. You must not angrily unbraid him. Then he who has come to curse you will merely harm himself. That's from Buddhism. And the last one says, why, sir, do you get angry at someone who is angry with you? What are you going to gain by it? How is he going to lose by it? Your physical anger brings dishonor to yourself. Your mental anger disturbs your thinking. How can the fire in your house burn the neighbor's house without engulfing your own? That's from Hinduism. Finally, I like to end with something. This is a list that comes from my own heart. Number 1, anger is not impressive to those around us. Don't be proud of your anger. Be embarrassed by it. Number 2, anger is not a wild ride, a thrill, or an adrenaline rush. Don't enjoy the result of your anger. Be ashamed. Number 3, anger is not what other people deserve. One day, each of us will desire mercy. Show some. Number 4, anger is not the answer to what annoys us. If we all used anger to find relief, the world would be consumed by it. Number 5, anger is not a friend that one can call upon for assistance. Anger will betray you and leave you in the trouble that it causes. Number 6, anger is not something you can control. You relinquish control when you choose to be angry. Anger is a test. Pass it. Number 7, anger is not a tool, a gift, a power, or a productive method for resolving any issue. The alternatives are many. Number 8, anger based on not getting what you want may lead to seeking out alternatives that become bad habits or vices. Think of it this way. You've traded in what you originally wanted for bad habits. Okay, try to remember what it is that you originally wanted and trade the bad habits back in for alternative ways to get what you want. That one I have to explain a little bit. Anger, if let's say I want to be rich and I keep trying to be rich and I can't be rich. So what I do is I start stealing to get money. Well, I'm never going to be rich stealing, but I'm going to have the money. And now I have a bad habit that's replaced the original goal, which was to become wealthy. Now I'm doing something illegal. I'm running from my life. I'm a fugitive. I'm hurting people. No one trusts me. I don't like myself. I've traded what I really wanted. My goal was just to be wealthy. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy. But I've traded that in for getting money any way I can. There's something wrong with that. So trade those bad habits that you've picked up when you were diverted from your actually achieving your original goal. Trade those back in for the original goal and try again. Number 9, anger is not something you get better at the more you use it. Anger gets the better of you the more it uses you. And number 10, anger is a part of us that we need to acknowledge, harness, and dispose of through substituting it with something else in order to become the person we wish we could be. Thanks for watching this episode of Time to Give Back. And remember, some fights are worth fighting. Find a worthy struggle and take it on, but not with anger.